welcome, welcome. This is Meet the Author series, and this is Dave Rogers with William Reed. Hello, Will. How are you today?
Hi, how are you, Dave? Yeah, it's nice to see you again.
Fantastic.
It just was what, a week since we saw you last in real in person.
In Japan, and I love the scenery that you have there. I'm building bridges. You mentioned San Francisco, but this is one of those beautiful images that I love is building bridges. And this one today, Canada, Japan, all around the world to assist authors, to serve authors, to talk to authors, and also get some tips to inspire authors or aspiring authors to start writing. So, Will, again, this is a very general question. Yet, tell us a little bit about you and why did you start writing books? And yes, you can show your books because you're a multiple time author. Yet share a little bit with our
Okay,
audience today. First introduction
sure.
to William Reed,
Yeah,
one of the most experienced
okay.
Japanese experts I know.
Okay. Well, the older I get, the more I have to say this. But to make a long story short, I started getting interested in Japan at the age of 11 when I was walking home from school one day, and these older kids came and kind of roughed up me and my friend, and so that got me into Aikido. And then I realized by discovering this book on Aikido, which eventually led me to Japan, that books were a magic door or window on worlds that you couldn't otherwise access. And this is way before the internet or computers or anything. And I've always loved books. And in fact, one of my favorite quotes is by Charlie Tremendous Jones, says that you will be the same person in 5 years, except for the people you meet and the books you read. And I tell this to my students, although people don't read books anymore. It's crazy, you know. We have I'm a university professor here living near Mount Fuji at the International College of Liberal Arts. And we have our campus, and then we have a library, which is, on campus. And I had put a book in the library, and I recommended it to one of my students, and he said, "Oh, but the library's too far." I said, "Well, too far. It's across the street." I actually timed it. It's a minute and 35 seconds. You were there, you saw. And I said, besides, you go to the convenience store 5 times a day, which is 3 times as far, and you pass the library every time. So what do you mean too far? But for me, books have been a way of communicating with people over time, people from the ancient past, interpreters of the people from the ancient past, science fiction authors going into the future. Books are wonderful. So I love reading books, and I eventually got to the point where there was so much kind of overflowing, I wanted to actually start writing. So I did start writing and never looked back. This is just a partial list. You can see I've got books in English and Japanese, and I'm pleased to say that several of my books in Japanese actually were #1 bestsellers on Amazon here in all categories won. That was amazing. But just the discipline of how you want to condense all that you want to say and all that you want to convey into a format that you can share with other people and that's going to be part of your legacy.
So that's a roundabout saying to people that books are a lot deeper than what you might be thinking right now as an aspiring author. And
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
somebody who wants to maybe bring your thoughts onto the paper, maybe tell a story, maybe
Mm,
inspire, maybe explain, uh, it's one of those things that it's very personal, yet it can have an
mm,
impact that can change people's lives, can have an impact that can inspire an
mm.
individual, a group, a country. And so, if you
Absolutely.
were to be giving advice to somebody who wants to write, doesn't know how to write, hasn't written their first book, hasn't written their 10th book,
Yeah.
what would be two or three things that you might say to them? Well,
I would say definitely get in the habit of taking notes by hand. Keep a notebook ongoing. That's the way. And one of my inspirations in that was actually a book called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci by my friend Michael Gelb. It's an international bestseller, but he recommends but follow the master. And all the masters, all the geniuses of all time have kept notebooks. And what this does is it somehow connects the writing of the hand and the speech and the thoughts start accelerating, and you capture things that would otherwise be lost. And you don't even need to go back and review them. It's fun to do that, but I think it's the act of writing down, not on a computer. You can summarize it, put it. I mean, I use my iPhone all the time. I'm capturing notes, but just capturing things that could only have been noticed and what's the word? Note taken in the moment. Because I look at like, okay, I'll just share two of my books. This is a book that I wrote on calligraphy called Shodo, the Art of Coordinating Mind, Body, and Brush. And this was written in, what came out in quite a long time, 1989. Okay, there's me and back in 1989, you know,
Fantastic.
and it it was the best summary of what I knew about and what was fresh in my mind about calligraphy. Shodo is the means the art of brush, painting with the brush at the time. And I don't think I could write this book again. The insights and the illustrations and the experiences were all fresh, and now it's been captured. Now, a lot of time passed. And I'd written a lot of other books, but I wanted to write a book on calligraphy because that was 30, some years ago. And so I did. It came out last year. It's called Song of the Brush, Dance of the Ink, and The Path to Self-Discovery Through Japanese Calligraphy. And although the first book is more of a how-to, but also a general broad view of Japanese calligraphy, and culture. This one is more philosophy, and so you've got a copy in your hand, right? I gave you a signed copy, yeah. But I put in this book on page, what's in the foreword. This is a picture of the characters that I just said, Song of the Brush, Dance of the Ink, done 30 years ago. This is hanging in an Aikido dojo in Virginia, and it's very bold sort of martial arts, and there I am in my Aikido uniform and stuff. And 30 years later, this is a picture of something I painted more recently. So it's, I don't know, it's a little hard to just show in the book here, but it's a very different, I don't know, energy.
Absolutely.
It's not all about martial arts. It's more
No.
it's more calligraphic. Obviously, 30 years of experience is a lot. Training with, I mean, I think at the time I had a 4th dan. Now I have a 10th dan in calligraphy, and just all the experience and all the exhibitions and all the live performances. It all goes in there. And yesterday, the chairman of our association, because we had an exhibition in Ginza yesterday, he said that the essence of calligraphy is kokoro, the spirit, the mind. And it's you can't go back and adjust anything. It's just it's like a sword fight with live blades. You just get one chance, and you've got to put everything in it. And it was so inspiring to hear this and see all these works on display and realize that all the people there had done this. Obviously, you practice and you get your best one and you get it on display, but all the people there had done their best to express in a few moments something that's very, very deep, and we're surrounded by it. And the energy in the room was awesome. So how do you share something like that? First of all, it's in Japanese, so most people can't read it, so it has to be translated. That's why I did this, and to catch up. And it's for me to, consolidate my thoughts. I don't know, always handwriting, to answer back to your question, always making handwritten notes, always trying to share what you've been given with others through stories, through teaching, because you learn best by teaching. And then eventually you need to put it down and publish it, because that's a whole new level. The memos that you scratch out to yourself is going to be very useful, but people probably can't even read your handwriting, right? I mean, not you, Dave, but you in the general sense. But then you need to get it to the point where not only is it's like dressing up for public performance, right? It's not just a casual thing, and you've got to have it run through an editor. You get so close to it that you miss, like, you can't really see it You might have written the word the twice, and your mind will not catch that, but the editor will. And you got to do it like 3, 4 times, and it's such a. I think the closest thing that a man can experience to childbirth is writing a book.
Mm.
Now I say that obviously not from experience of giving a childbirth, but I think it's very painful. But then you produce, a child comes out and it's your baby. You got to cultivate it. It's not the end when you write the book. You got to keep going and share it through lectures and as gifts and developing new insights. Yeah.
And so, what you just witnessed, people who might be watching this, and I hope you really are hearing it, is Will's just given you a 35, 40-year experience of being an author. And so, as a young person, you might write that book. And part of it's to demonstrate or to actually be a snapshot of where you are today. And when you look at
Yeah.
it, reflect upon it in 20 or 30, it's not about making the earlier one wrong. It's about perhaps doing the next one in a different way that articulates a different type of energy, a different types of
Yeah.
essence. And that's what's really beautiful about this interview too, Will, is that most of the people I've spoken to during the Meet the Author talks about their specific book, talks about specific tips on writing the book, whereas you shared the journey, the 40-year journey, the 50-year journey through life's experiences that you've had with martial
Mm.
arts, with capturing the essence of going very deep, because very few people will go to a second dan or a sixth dan or an eighth dan to a 10th dan that you have.
Yeah.
Most people in the West, at least, I think they have a feeling, get my black belt and that's the end of the journey.
Yeah.
Whereas, in
And you're
Asia,
done. Yeah.
no, black belt is the start of the journey. And so
Yeah,
for
well, Showdown means first step, actually, not
right.
not black. They don't call it black belt. They call it Showdown, first step.
So that's what's really beautiful. And today, what we're doing is, as opposed to the traditional meet the author and let's talk about my book, we're giving an insight in for some of the wisdom that you're getting from writing. And calligraphy is almost a little microcosm of writing a book, because
Mm.
you get in a room and you do
Yeah,
one character or two
yeah,
characters and you
yeah,
breathe into it, you flow into it, you get yourself into the zone with it, and then you
yeah.
calibrate with the brush and with the paint and with the paper, and you co-create
And
something
here's a
that could
cool thing
last
about
forever.
yeah, well, that's a great summary of, and I love your passion about it. Here's an interesting way I learned at the last calligraphy exhibition. We had a fairly famous art history professor, critic, well known in Japan. He came and he gave a talk, and he said that the difference between, he talked about art and literature and calligraphy. And he said that in art, we're talking about visual arts now, you first see it and then you learn to read it, because there's the composition and the background and what the artist was trying to express and all the backstory. So first you see it and then you learn to read it. And in literature, first you read it and then you learn to see in your mind's eye what's happening. The magic of calligraphy, it is both literature and painting at the same time.
I
Isn't that cool?
It is so cool, and it really is, because I got to witness you do calligraphy. That's the thing. I went to your calligraphy class for beginners, which was
Yeah.
fascinating because you had 26 students you needed to engage and keep their
30,
attention.
yeah.
And then I had some one-on-one time with you when I actually got to witness you go into a altered state where your hand was in sync with the brush
Uh,
and the ink and the paper. And I recorded it, and I thought it was going to be something that took maybe 5 seconds. Yet no, it was over a minute and a half, and it was just there was elegance, there was precision, there was passion, there was energy flowing, and it gave me goosebumps. It gives me goosebumps even to say it to you now, because that type of vitality, life force comes through in your calligraphy. And I think this is the type of talk that could go much deeper, and it really is amazing to be able to ask you to give some tips to aspiring authors. As somebody who has written many
Mm.
books, you're also teaching, which is so great because you are harnessing the beginner journey, yet you're also showing them perhaps some of the steps they might go
Mm.
towards, and you're inviting them to take their own steps. And that's again
Yeah.
the mastery of teaching,
Well,
the mastery of mentoring, the mastery of caring for people's journey, yet not attached to perhaps the outcome of it.
well, yeah, it's like it was so interesting because you came right at the beginning of the semester, right? And the students were, I don't know what it was, the third class or something like that. And the first class I had demonstrated, and they were all looking at it. And then the second class, they started actually painting. And it was, they said, well, this is much harder than we thought. You made it look so easy. And well, yeah, 50 years of experience with it, it helps a lot. But the interesting thing is that it kind of describes a journey that we all go through. I mean, calligraphy is just a metaphor, or it's a frame, it's a game you can play that gets you into the game that helps you experience it. So what happens is you're in your comfort zone, right? And everybody says, "Oh yeah, they're pretty comfortable with the way they are." And then you give them a challenge, which is like, can you even use the brush? And everyone's saying, well, the brush doesn't do what I want it to do. And I said, no, it does exactly what you are telling it to do. It's just you're not really giving it very clear instructions, and you maybe haven't mastered some of the physical tips of how to hold it. But so you get into a crisis because now, of course, it's a course, they get graded on it, right? And I show them the work that some of my own students, girl from France who did this after 8 weeks, did something. Japanese think, oh, this person's been doing it for 10, 20 years. No, 8 weeks. And so as if I show them my stuff or my teacher's stuff, they say, yeah, but you have all this experience. So show them something one of their friends did after a very similar amount of experience. They don't have any excuses anymore. So they're now in crisis mode. It's like they've fallen into a hole and they don't know how to get out. I said, well, don't worry. Not only have other people, your friends, and some of the people who've taken the course before will come and assist, that not only do you have the social proof there, but I'll give them the tips. I'll give them the shortcuts. My long journey will become your shortcut. So then what happens is they're in the crisis mode. They can panic and say, wait, don't panic. You can do this, but don't try to do everything at once. Let's take one tip at a time, and like Kaizen, gradual improvement. And as long as you've made something better than you did before, keep the before after, you'll be encouraged and you'll climb out of that hole before you know it. And I can say this with assurance because this particular course, this is my 9th year of teaching, teach twice a year with the semesters. So it's like the 17th time I've been through this with students from over 40 countries. So I know it works. I can have absolute conviction. And I actually then measure my progress, not only by my own works, but how much my students improve. And I give them the mastery tips, and then it's up to them. There's one, to get to that better place. Just one more analogy. There's a Zen phrase called sotaku doji. And sotaku means it's like the image of a bird pecking on a shell, a mother bird. You have the bird inside, unborn, pecking from the inside, but it's not strong enough to break the shell. And if the shell were to break too soon, it would die. Well, when it gets strong enough to peck, then the mother bird hears that and pecks back at the same place. And when it's done with perfect timing, the shell breaks open, the bird is born, and it's safely able then to be in the world. I mean, it's a dangerous world, but at least it's out of the shell. And so I tell my students, my job is to listen to where you're pecking, but unless you're pecking, I can't hear it. You got to try, I'll peck back, and we'll break through. And then hopefully you'll learn to fly.
And it triggers for me, you're giving them in 8 weeks the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell, where they
Yeah.
go through the crisis. Yet when you go through the crisis and you get the right team or mentor, the crisis shifts because perspective shifts to opportunity, and they have the opportunity to gain a new superpower. And in many
Exactly.
ways,
Yeah.
that was part of my journey with you, is I had these superpowers, and now I've come back to my Canadian reality, and I'm curious on what to do with it. Yet this has been a
Yeah.
beautiful opportunity to interview you, to have some of your distinctions, to share them. I am going to take a little pivot and say, okay, so one of the ideas, which is so adamant, you and I are so aligned with, is encouraging aspiring authors to journal, to have a journal, to
Yeah,
write,
yeah,
to do that frequently. And then there is a journey to get working with editors, or allowing all of
hmm
your writing to come into a fruition. What would be one or two other tips to really get an aspiring
yeah.
author on their track?
Great question. Well, before a publisher, I mean, publishers get approached all the time, and most books that get published never make it out of the shell, right? You know, it's hard for a book to survive. So they want to know that you're worth investing in. And many publishers today will say, make the author take the risk of at least footing the bill for the first printing so that they end up not losing any money. But you have to be prepared to invest in that. But before that, actually, in most of my books from my first one on, they say, give us a table of contents and give us a one-page preamble on what it's about. Well, one book, and this was amazing. It was not the first book I'd done in Japanese, but it was uh, yeah, it was called World Class Speaking, and it was trying to get the know-how of my teacher, Craig Valentine, who I had studied with, and I was certified as a world class speaking coach. And I wanted to write the book, not a translation of his stuff, but the book for Japan, you know, in Japanese. And so I went to a course that took 6 months. We'd meet for a day every month, and then there were like 21 authors in this group, and they were all published authors. I was a published author, but they were all Japanese. I was the only one, the American one, or foreign. And so the first day they said, you've got to write, as part of this course, in Japanese, something that you could show to the publisher. It would be a 7-page marketing plan. In other words, you got to analyze who the readership is, and obviously what the book is focused on, what the preliminary title would be, all this stuff, you know. And I was like, that's hard enough in English. I said, I'm not a native speaker. I read Japanese quite well, but he said to me, the instructor said, if you can't write a 7-page document in Japanese, how do you expect to write a whole book? I said, damn, you're right. I just got to do it. So I buckled down, and, you know, it's challenging. But interestingly, over this 6 months, which is meeting once a month, once a day for 6 months, a lot of people dropped out. These are published authors because it was so hard. And then you had to actually practice presenting it. And then the final thing of this course was he was going to put us in front of three editors of 3 major publishers. And then you'd have, I forget, it was 10 minutes or so to present your 7-page marketing plan. This is so cool, you know. So by this time, there were only 6 people left in the course out of 21. They just didn't make it. They dropped out. It was too hard. And I was one of them. And then we had the meeting in the morning to meet these editors, and then everyone's going to go out to lunch. And I said, okay, I'm not going out to lunch. I can eat anytime. I'm going to get ready while everybody else is away, and I'm going to illustrate, make some sketches, some cartoons, and some key words on the whiteboard, which I've reversed so they couldn't see it. And then it got to the point where, and most of the other 5 authors, all of them, would just read their plan. And the guys were bored. They'd already read through it. They can read super fast. And it's like, you know, tell me something I don't already know. And you can see, and then they would have, they would hold up a circle if they definitely wanted to publish your book, a cross if they weren't interested, thank you for your time, or a triangle if they were not necessarily interested in your book, but they were interested in you or some version of it, right? And so you had 3 authors, and they would hold up these placards. And for most of them, they all got X's. Everybody, after all this effort, even surviving to that level. And so I think that they failed in the presentation side, actually. I don't know about their plan. But what I did was I told them, because there's a book on presentations, for God's sake, you know, I said, you know, I'm not going to insult your intelligence or waste your time. You have the summary in front of you, but I'd like you to put it down and let me talk to you about it. And I flipped the board, and it had some illustrations and some statistics about how Japanese were, struggling with the presentation thing, and a little bit about, and then I'd highlight one or two things in the thing, and I got two triangles from two of the people, and one triangle and one circle, the same guy. So I said, well, that's who I'm going with. That's Kadokawa Books, and they're one of the major publishers. And then I met with them for 6 months, and I would talk because I like to talk, And I was speaking, I would answer questions, right? And he'd be taking notes and recording it. And then together we put together the book. I mean, I would have the final, I would have to read it and prove it, and it was based on my marketing plan. But I would speak, and they would record, and then they would try to summarize what they thought would make a good summary of it. And then they were really good at designing. I mean, they had, they could put together like these illustrations and stuff. I designed it like a chess game. So
Mhm.
each chapter had a chess piece, and it came out really well, and it got to number one on Amazon. So that kind of put me on the map as a somebody that does this, right? That's just one of the things that I do, but that's kind of how that book happened. And each one has its own story, but it's not. Don't think you have to do it all yourself, but you have to be really clear on your ideas and your value and your credibility, because part of it is, why should we listen to you? That's part of the
Absolutely.
marketing plan.
Yes.
So you can't just say, well, because I want to write a book. That's not going to do it.
Right. So what you've been able to share with us is that there's different types of books that people are going to write.
Yeah.
There's different journeys that people are going to take. I guess the
Yeah.
the comment is, folks, the first book you write is likely not to be the last book you write. Yet it
Yes.
is to get you started to learn the industry, the practice of book writing. A big part when I talk to people who are into their second or third book is actually really improving their marketing and their distribution. And that's really what Will's talking about there. I've got a fun question for you, though, Will, is that Song of the Brush, Dance of the Ink. If we could get that
Hmm.
book into somebody's hands around the world, that would take
Oh,
you and your books and your wisdom to the whole new level. Give me two names of people that I can hashtag in this interview so that maybe the magics of algorithms will get it into their energy field. Who would be one or two people you'd love to get access to
okay.
this book?
I have a good answer for that. I'm going to go to my endorsements page,
Yes,
right?
it's fantastic endorsements.
Yeah, and the people that I would like you to hashtag. Let's see. There's the
I'm talking about
okay.
new world. It's to assist with the next level of taking the book to a
Yeah,
whole new level. Will,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, but these people could help do that, because even though they know me and they endorse my book, it would be a reminder of them that, hey, oh yeah, there's something happening there, and maybe I should introduce this other person.
okay,
So the first one would be, you can find it on the first page of the
right,
endorsements, so I
yep,
won't go into detail, but it would be Gordon Watson, the CEO of AXA Asia and Africa.
okay,
He's a Scotsman,
yep,
and he lives in Hong Kong. And you can find him on LinkedIn as well, so you can hashtag there. And
okay,
the second one would be Jerome Shushan, who's the CEO of Godiva, well, Japan at the time, but also of now for Godiva chocolates for all of the world. So
okay,
those two people, Jerome Shushan, he's on the second page. And the thing that I love about both of them is that Gordon is um, he's the president of this life insurance company, but it's a very forward-looking one, and they're very dedicated to empowering women and to mental health and all these great things, not just to making money from, I mean, it's to their advantage to have people live a long time and live well, because if they die young, they have to pay out the big bucks, right?
all right,
But anyway, Gordon's also an artist, and he loves art, right? And he's just very check out his LinkedIn stuff, and you find amazing videos. Gordon Watson,
all right.
and
I'll do
then
that.
Jerome Shishon. author of a book on Kyudo, the Japanese art of archery, and how he used this to the philosophy and the practice of Kyudo as a means of as a philosophy for the business. And he actually ended up tripling their sales in 5 years. And that's why he's
Fantastic.
president of Good Eye all over the whole world now. But he's
Fantastic.
also a good friend and a fellow martial artist. So I would definitely hashtag those two.
All right. I would like to ask you to tell people or share with people ways that they can access this book and the way that they can access you and any of the interesting potential areas that this book might serve people around the world.
Yeah, okay. Well, this book, I mean, you can see from the title, there's also a Kindle version, but it's better if you buy the not hardback, but the paperback version. So you can find it on Amazon easily enough, but it's even better actually to buy it in a bookstore. Bookstores, I don't know, Amazon, I use Amazon a lot, but publishers really appreciate sales from bookstores. And then when you say it, if they have it on their shelves, great. If they don't, they say, "You please get it." So that would be one way. And then the other thing is to share, like you can share read it aloud, read sections of it aloud, because the sub chapters are quite short, and they're very significant even for people who aren't doing calligraphy. The book is now it's a required reading at the Kansas City Art Institute, which I think is really cool because that's where Walt Disney got his start. So I would love it if it would appear more in art schools and colleges, because I'm a college professor myself. So I would love to make connections with college professors in around the world. I'm already starting to do that, but through the book and sharing, that. What else? My website is samurai-walk, as in walking, samurai-walk.com. There is some information about some of the other things I do on there, but yeah, that's a good. Also, all my social media connections are on that website. So if you go to samurai-walk.com, please connect. I'm quite open to meeting and speaking with people around the world. So.
Fantastic. So I'm going to put all those comments in the comment, or all those links in the comment section. And it's been great to have a conversation with you today, Will. Thank you so much for your hospitality when I was in Japan. It was wonderful to visit the university and to meet some of the students. And as a wrap up to the session, is there perhaps a quote that you would like to share, or perhaps yes, something that
yes, there is.
yes.
It's a proverb in Chinese originally, and then into Japanese, which is is pronounced furo fushi, and fu means not, and ro well, it means getting old, and then fu means not, and then shi means dying. So it means literal translation is perpetual youth and immortality. Well, Chinese like to exaggerate, as you may know. So I don't think you can, say that you're never going to die. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But I modify that. I paraphrase this: perpetual youth and longevity. And longevity meaning not necessarily the number of years, but the number of well-lived years. And I in a couple of months I turned 71, so I feel like that calligraphy has served me well on that. And I tell my students, this is keep your brain young. It'll keep your breathing, your posture, everything will improve. So there's just a lot of good reasons to do it, and a lot of help if you want to on how to do it. So I would say perpetual youth and longevity. That's the phrase.
Beautiful. Very well. Thank you very much, Will. Appreciate your time and your energy. And people around the world, if you'd like to learn more about calligraphy, Japan, energy, Will Weed is definitely the guy to connect with. Thank you very much, Will.
Thank you, Dave.
Arigato.